Well, good morning. Here it is, July, and this is us again. And this time we're on time. So that's it. And we
So that's a
remembered.
good thing.
And we remembered to
And
do
we
it.
both remembered.
We both remembered. So here we are. So we're
And
having
we have something exciting to
we have
talk
something
about.
new and very surprising to me, anyway.
I mean, it's exciting to us. It's
You go ahead.
it's John's discovering that he has been taking these photos of the farm and of me with the sheep, and that it's actually a genre of painting and a genre of art that's called pastoral, and he has been doing this without knowledge of this being a thing. Okay, so what I find exciting about that is it talks to the idea that John is an artist, is finding this thing inside of himself and finding himself doing this thing, and then going and looking it up and getting more information about it and seeing that it's something that people have been doing for a very long time.
I should just interrupt briefly to say, that the pastoral photography painting movement, now the pastoral photography movement, began after the people in the farms, especially the sheep herders, went to the cities, and the cities came out, and people in the cities, it seems, really missed the farm. They missed farm life. They particularly missed the lives of the sheep herders, who at the time were a fascinating group of people. They were outcasts. They didn't want to get married. They didn't want to have kids. Bing, bing, bing. They they were missed. So the pastoral movement began when people started doing these paintings about them. They were really outcast, interesting characters.
You know what's interesting about that is it's that idea that when the shepherds were in people's lives, they didn't want to have anything to do with them, right? You wrote about that.
They were outcasts. They cared about what they did, but they didn't want to have anything personally to do with it.
You said they couldn't even worship
They
in
were
the
not
same
allowed because they're
church?
dirty. They were dirty. They were filthy all the time. They were killing the sheep and eating them, cutting them up, and they were just so dirty and strange. Nobody would marry them either. So they had these lives of really, they were all alone. And then I saw, researching it, all the paintings of them had them alone. There was never anybody else in it except the dog, the border collies.
And the sheep, maybe.
And the sheep.
Yeah.
They weren't border collies yet, but. So I was shocked to when I started taking what I call the morning pictures, morning pastorals, how many people reacted to that. Well, that's beautiful. That's special, because here in this country, the same thing has happened. Everybody has left the farms, and in cities where life is more tense and more remote and colder, especially now, it's even worse. So I said, well, I'm putting up these pictures because they're very beautiful, and it'll help people be calm. That's what they did. That's what they were for, and deal with the stresses of life here at the moment. I didn't know I was doing that until people started emailing me and saying how calming the pictures were, not only of the flowers, but in the morning. I was taking these pictures in the morning. I was creating these pastoral scenes, not creating them, but photographing them. And there was nothing in them but beauty. That's what they were about. And I realized, reading about it, that I had a shepherd here on the premise, which I should have known, because she is a shepherd, very much so. You agreed with that, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me a really long time to think of myself as a shepherd, and it was a couple of years ago, and it actually came out of my art too. I was doing a little drawing of the sheep, and then I just thought I'm a shepherd, and I wrote the words that I'm a shepherd or something along those lines, and it's the first time I ever identified myself as a shepherd. And it's still one of those. It's still a little fuzzy. I think the same way you think about being an artist is a little fuzzy.
Yeah, I didn't think I was an artist.
Right.
You didn't think you were a shepherd.
But then,
and I could see you doing it, and you could see me doing it.
Oh, well, you are definitely a shepherd. When you were reading to me that description of the shepherd, all I could see was you up on the hill in Old Bedlam Farm with Rose and reading St. Augustine and the sheep, and you were so alone there. You were I mean, you weren't dirty and smelly or anything, but you were an outcast from your own life. And where did you gravitate to being a shepherd? Where is a place where people obviously gravitated to throughout history.
And one of the reasons I came here was to bring the sheep up and do sheep, didn't work the dogs with them. I wasn't the kind of you are. You're different because you have an emotional connection to them. I was there for the dogs really, and it was a little colder. Although I love being out with the sheep, I love taking them out. But I never connected emotionally with them the way that you have.
Well, I bet the shepherds didn't connect probably in the same way too. I mean, the sheep, like you said, they were for food, they were for clothing, so it was a real job.
But I think from the pictures you do see that emotion, the early paintings.
Yeah.
That because they were alone with them, that was their whole lives, and because the cities were even rougher then than they are now.
Yeah.
So people really missed them because they saw them all the time. They came around. They brought food. They treated their own animals, and like you, they brought the shepherds broadened their feelings with animals. It wasn't just sheep. They took care of all the animals and other people's animals. They just weren't allowed to anybody's house ever.
They could stay in the barn.
It's different here. You are allowed into the house. I love the idea that the two of us were doing this. You weren't quite seeing yourself as a shepherd, and I still don't see myself as an artist, really. But I'm also acting like one, and my photography has really evolved greatly from this, because now I have a whole different idea of what a beautiful picture is, and there's also a person to center it, so it's centered around you, so that makes it easier. But also, I'm seeing all these beautiful pastures and beautiful up here, and I wasn't taking pictures of them before. And I'm also like startled by the response, and also by how much I love doing this.
I think a good example of that idea of it's been here all along and you didn't see it, which happens very often. We can't see what's right in front of us. Is the pictures behind my studio that you take through the the back of my studio and the dogs. Yeah. I mean, it's such a secretive kind of spot back there. And when you finally saw it, now it's like you go out there every day looking for that picture. But I think that's part of being the artist. Your eye is getting acclimated to seeing a certain way, and so you are able to see more of the things that have meaning for you.
You really do see the world anew, and also living with you. I mean, it's nice to be supported in this. It makes a big difference, but that helps. But I think that's what I see with you. You've also evolved. Your relationship is not just with the sheep. You talk to the sheep. You have their names. You talk to each one every day, and you also will talk to the bugs and save them. And you'll talk to the other animals. I see you sitting there, scratching one of the sheep like old buddies from college. It's they have a relationship. They come to you. They trust you. They listen to you. So there's a relationship that goes well beyond anything that I had, because I wasn't really looking for that. And it wasn't natural to me the way it is to you. I mean, you really... So, and reading more and more, I was reading about the shepherds this morning, the early shepherds. They had a lot to do with you, really, the way they lived. They were somewhat outcasts, but they weren't antisocial. They just, nobody would want to be around them.
What are you saying, John?
No, I don't think that's true with you. But you're very human, and you're very connected to humans. And people don't ban you from their houses and stuff.
Well, some of them.
But I think the sense of being, I wouldn't say outcast, but the outsider.
Yeah.
Which both of us have brought to this whole experience. And so I'm out there by myself every morning and taking pictures of you. Now I have a person to center it around, along with the scenes. And what the early painters did, and then the photographers later, was look for these idyllic scenes. In a way, they romanticized the country, because what they were painting didn't exist quite in the same way anymore. The same with me. I have this sort of idyllic way of looking at our property and the land, but if you go 10 feet other way, there's traffic and trucks and other things happening, sirens and all that they didn't have. So it is a bit idealized. But then I see that's exactly what people like about it, because all of us everyone used to be living out in the country. And I think it's in our genes. It's in my genes. I just didn't know it. And so that's a very powerful experience. I feel this great transition going on, and how very lucky I am both to have Maria to support it, but also to what it's opening up in me. It's really changing me. So so you do with photography, you learn to see the world anew, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm very lucky to be doing that at my age. I'm 112 years old, and to be able to have this
And you're
opportunity.
not that old.
Not that old yet, but a way to have this opportunity is a tremendous gift. And I love the fact that it's something an experience we share from different ends of the spectrum. I was reading about the shepherds this morning a little bit, and I love their lives. I mean, they're really fierce individuals. They live their own lives. They didn't take orders from anybody, and they wanted to be alone in their work. You know, I don't know what they felt like personally. You know, they slept with the sheep and
it makes me think of Johnny Appleseed, you know, who really was a mystic, and he didn't sleep. He never slept inside. People would not have him in their homes, but he didn't even want to. So he would have been, you know, considered one of those people, I think.
Yeah. You're a lot cleaner than that, but
yeah.
but you're out there working with muck all the time. You're walking in manure and all this other stuff, and you have a high tolerance for it. And I think your love of animals is blossoming. So the role of the shepherd is not just the sheep. The role of the shepherd takes on a different context. You're almost keeping nature alive.
In a way, it's the whole farm. You know,
and nature.
It's
nature.
Not, well, I'm not keeping nature alive, but I'm.
Well, you are by writing about it. You are by loving it.
I'm part of. I feel more integrated with it anyway. Yeah.
So I wonder where this goes from here.
Well, that's the interesting thing about art and about creating is you don't really know where it goes. You'll do this and you'll do this and you'll do this, and and then it'll just evolve naturally, and you'll be surprised by what happens next. You know, it'll lead to something else.
I'm already surprised. I can't.
Yeah.
You know, look at the evolution of it. You know, I never had flowers. I never paid attention to flowers, and now I'm taking pictures of flowers every day, and loving it, and getting other people to appreciate it. And now this other thing is happening, and it's bringing me back into the ideas of nature and remembering how beautiful nature is.
But this is what art does. It tells us about ourselves too, because that's obviously something that you are more and more. You can't, certain times of the year it's hard for you to be outside between the cold and the heat and the bugs. But you're still immersed in nature just because of where we live and because now of the art that you're making. And I think what happens with art is it tells us about ourselves. So what you're doing now is a reminder to you to say, you may not be able to physically be out in it for long periods of time, but it's still an important part of your life, and you're bringing it into your life in the way that you can, and that's through your art. And that happened without your thinking about it. That just organically happened. That was in your subconscious. It comes out in your art. And I think that's a big part of what's going on with you.
Well, the other thing is realizing, too, that how we are outsiders. I had a friend of mine from New York call me up and say, "What are you doing these days?" And I said, well, I told him, I said, I'm doing a food pantry, I'm doing this. He thought I lost my mind. He said, What do you mean you're taking pictures of trees and stuff? He just couldn't quite fathom what I was talking about. And he said, well, that sounds interesting, or something like that. I thought he was really eager to get off the phone. I could see you get off the phone and say, well, poor John, he's absolutely lost his marbles up there. So this is not what most people are doing. And even most writers and things are not doing it, and most artists, maybe they are doing it.
I'm sure a lot of artists are doing it, and I mean, there's places where people are doing it. There's writers who are writing about nature and that type of thing. But this is your own personal way of expressing it, and everyone has their way of doing it. So
well, and you're comfortable now being a shepherd, which you wouldn't have been.
Yes, I
years
am.
ago.
I think
and I'm calling myself an artist, which I didn't do
That's
6
right.
months ago.
New identities.
It's a new identity.
And it's nice to have that when you're,
It's wonderful. It's a great gift.
You're going to be 78, and here you have a whole new identity.
And then there's the food pantry stuff, which for me is very important in my life now, which provides a connection to the real world that balances it. So that's a big part of me too, and
Right.
I like them all going. So my age, a lot of people aren't quite that busy, and I'm so busy. I've never been that busy in my life, and I'm liking it. So anyway, I think our time is up.
I think we're done.
Anything else you want to add to this?
Not that I can think of. I think we've kind of hit everything for now, but who knows? We may come back and revisit it again.
It could be a wonderful movie, The Artist and the Sheep Herd. Shepherd. All right, well, I said so. Until next week, thank you for coming. Thank you for
everyone.
following us. Goodbye, everyone. And we love you. Bye-bye.